So the first question we ask everyone that comes on is, how did you get your job? AKA, how did you find yourself doing the work you're doing today?
You know, I always, since the time I was little, Nathan, I always sort of knew I would be an entrepreneur one day. I thought that like I would, save candy that I would get at a holiday. And then I would think, how can I sell this? And so I always kind of had that inkling. But then I actually thought growing up that I would do something totally different. I would sit in my living room and watch Oprah every day as a little girl. And I thought one day I'm gonna share other people's stories with the world. And so, growing up, I kind of had my sights set on that, and I did all kinds of jobs, from waitressing at Denny's to pushing grocery carts in the parking lot, and all those things, slicing meat in the deli. And I eventually landed in what I thought was my dream job, which was anchoring television news and sharing people's stories with the world. And like so many entrepreneurs, I had a big problem happen that I couldn't solve. And I kind of had this big aha moment where I was like, oh my gosh, if there's hundreds of companies out there that do this and none of them work for me, like what if I just try to figure it out? And so, now everyone sees, It Cosmetics, the company that I started in my living room, as this sort of like billion-dollar brand. But how it really started was I was thinking I was in one dream job, thinking I would stay there forever on television news. And I learned this big lesson that sometimes knowing when to go after a dream, or I should say when to let go of a dream, matters as much as when to go after one. And I was just, I was anchoring the news every day and live on camera. And I developed a skin condition called rosacea. So for me, like my cheeks, my forehead, my nose, everything would get really, really red and bumpy. And so I started, spending my whole paycheck on makeup products. And I tried everything out there, from the most expensive stuff to the least expensive, and nothing would work. And there was one moment, Nathan, that was sort of the pivotal moment for me, which was, I was live on air, and all of a sudden I hear in my earpiece from the producer, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off. You need to wipe it off. And I'm live over the airways, and I glanced down into my little compact mirror off the side, and I knew what it was. It was that the makeup was kind of breaking up, almost the way, like if you imagine clay in a desert starts to crack. It was like cracking on my face, and the redness, the bright red skin was coming through. And my producer had no idea what it was. He just thought, like, wipe it off, get it off. And I knew there was nothing I could wipe off. I kept trying to reapply makeup, and it wasn't working. And so this sort of started, what I thought was a season of setback in my life. I thought, like, am I going to get fired? Are viewers changing the channel? Because every single time I would go on the air live, it would happen, right? Because the hot HD lights would start to break up the makeup. And so I would find myself in the same situation. And it was, and then I realized, like, okay, if I can't find anything out there, and there's hundreds of makeup companies, I can't find anything that works for me, there must be so many other people out there that maybe have just given up on makeup or feel like they've never found anything for them. And so, for every person who is a founder or an entrepreneur listening right now, or maybe someone who hasn't taken the leap yet, but they're listening and reading the founder because they know they want to one day, I want to share that, because this is really important. It's easy to see the outcome and the success story, but for a long time, Nathan, I had this idea, like, what if I launch my own company? What if I do it? And my gut told me I was supposed to do it. Like, I couldn't shake that feeling. But for a long time, I didn't do it because my head was sort of talking me out of it. I would think things like, oh, but you're not qualified, and you don't have any money, and you don't have any connections, and you know what I mean? And so many people, I'm sure, have already tried to do it. And if there's nothing that works, what makes you think you can? And just all of those thoughts that we tend to have. And when I look back now, I am so glad I listened to my gut and went for it and took the big chance, even though it was much harder than I could have imagined. Because I think so often in life, our head tells, our gut's telling us one thing, but then our head is telling us another. And our life comes down to which one we listen to. So.
Yeah, wow. What a crazy story. So Can you tell me kind of, I'm just curious, how long did you have this idea in your head?
Well, it was a couple years because I was just trying to find anything that would work. And one thing that happened that sort of put me over the edge, that I think is really important just to share, especially with anyone out there who, whatever phase they're at in their business or their entrepreneurial journey, is early on. I had a blessing that I look back now and go, thank goodness that happened. And it's really what put me over the edge to really launch this thing and go for it. And, we hear so many amazing thought leaders talk about your why and identifying the why of your business and your brand and your mission. And what I know now, because I've now had the gift of just meeting tens of thousands of entrepreneurs over the years, and a lot of people, I think, they think their why is strong enough, but they haven't actually done the work to peel back the layers and like go deeper and get to the why beneath the why that's so powerful that they can lean on it when the times are super tough and they're tempted to quit. And when I look back at this moment after having this idea for a couple years, one thing that happened so, I guess, serendipitously, or out of sheer grace, I should say, is that, initially I thought like, oh, okay, I can just create a makeup product that if it works for me, it'll probably work for so many other people. So my why could have very easily been like, oh, I'll solve my own problems, but I'll help so many other people too. And I think a why like that is why so many entrepreneurs fail. And here's what I mean by that. Because when we share a why like that with someone else, they're like, that's great. That's so virtuous. That's awesome. And then we think it's enough. We think it's enough if we have a why that's I'm going to help people or this or that. Because, I did want to help people. But what happened, and I want to call this out for anyone listening, because I think this is really important. Challenge yourself, whatever you believe your mission or your personal why is for your own company. And this isn't something that has to be part of your mission statement. I'm more talking about as a founder, your personal why for why you're doing what you're doing, or perhaps why you have a big goal that you're working on. Is take your why, but then literally go deeper, like peel back the layers and try to go deeper to the deep why beneath the why. And in my case, what happened is I realized like at this one moment, and this is what put me over the edge to launch everything, was like, I was like, I don't understand. This makes no sense that there are so many companies. Why do none of them work for me? And then what I realized was like, wait, I've actually never seen a model who has like bright red rosacea selling makeup products, right? And then I started thinking about growing up as a little girl. And what I realized is every time I would see the beauty ads on television or in magazines, like I loved them. I aspired to, look like them. But at a real deep level, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And I had this big moment where I realized like, okay, I want to launch products that work, but what if when I launch a beauty company, what if I can actually use real people as models and like all different ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges and call them beautiful and mean it. And what if I could actually like shift the definition of beauty inside the entire industry, for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself and every grown person who still does. And it was kind of this huge, crazy idea for someone that was sitting there with no money, no connections, not sure how it was even going to happen. But I got that deep, deep, deep why that was so not just painful, but really meaningful, purposeful for me. And that came early on. And, after I jumped into entrepreneurship and, poured every penny I had into it, I didn't know it would be 3 years before I could even afford to pay myself at all. I didn't know that I would get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's. And I think that as founders, as entrepreneurs, as people with big dreams on our heart, we need like a toolbox of things we can pull from that help us maintain our resiliency. And for me, I think one of those real important tools was really that deep, 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 meaningful why, where I realized, okay, what I'm doing is bigger than myself. It's not just about me, right? And the last thing I'll say to this really quickly, because I think sometimes people think their why has to be some like global, grandiose, thing. Sometimes your why, your deep why, may have nothing to do with your actual company, but your deep why may be like, I'm going to be the first person in generations of my family to break a cycle of poverty or of lack, or I'm going to be the first person that, goes for it and doesn't let self-doubt hold me back in my entire family, right? It could be, there's deep whys, or I want to show my children what it looks like to go after a dream. There's a lot of different whys beneath the why, but I think identifying one of those that really truly hits home is such a key, because being a founder or an entrepreneur at any stage, right? I've kind of seen a lot of different stages, from no money, no one believes in you, you're about to go bankrupt for a few years, to private equity investment and massive growth, to we built to over 1,000 employees. And when we eventually were acquired by L'Oreal, it was their largest acquisition in the US in their history. And then I was part of the largest beauty company in the world as well. So it's kind of like I've seen inside all those, and they all come with their challenges. But I think no matter what phase you're at, having that deep why beneath the why is super, super important to do the work for. It's worth spending the time in, for sure.
How did you actually start a cosmetic line? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. I love this. I hope I am of service to them, and to your whole community in this time. So thank you for sharing. And thank you also, Jennifer. I just want to say this off the top. Thank you for having me. And thank you for sharing this big moment of my book launch with me too.
Yes, I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah. I feel like, tell me if you feel this way, that, I know you coach thousands of women in their businesses and their dreams and everything else. And I feel like we share so many, no matter if they're going into beauty or to any other space. Mm-hmm. It's like these fundamentals of how to launch a dream and go after your dream and overcome self-doubt, and like how to handle the rejection and the resilience, like how to have the resiliency to get past it. I feel like we all kind of have those things in common. And thanks for asking me how I started the business, because I love the idea of getting down to like the granular. Because when you Google my story, all you see is like, oh, Denny's waitress built $1 billion company. But
exactly,
just that makes people feel alone in their own journey when they're dealing with the setbacks or the hard times. And so for me, how I started it, I wasn't planning to. So it was honestly, I call it my knowing or a God moment for me. But I thought I was in my dream job. I was working as a journalist, and since the time I was a little girl, I used to, watch Oprah and want to share other people's stories. Like, I really just want to ask you questions right now is my, about your story. Like, that's what my tendency, my love. But so I was working as that in my career, and I thought I was going to do that forever. And I went through this big season of what I thought was a setback in my life. And that came in the form of rosacea. So I have a skin condition called rosacea, which is bright red. For me, it gets really inflamed in the form of like big bumps, and my cheeks feel like sandpaper a lot. Yes. And when this started happening, I was working as a news anchor, and I started, so I went to dermatologists and learned there's no cure, and I would try all the things that they had, and none of them would work. And so I started going through like this big season of self-doubt that I thought was a setback in my life. So I would be anchoring the news live, and I would hear from my producer in my earpiece, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off. And I'd be live, and they were just trying to help me, but I knew, there's nothing I can wipe off. This is the makeup breaking up and the redness coming through. So I kind of went through this, what started as a season of self-doubt, where I would think things like, am I going to get fired? Are viewers going to change the channel? Like all those things. And I started spending money on trying to find a product that worked. So I went to the drugstores, the department stores, the pro makeup artist lines. And I had a big realization that like, wow, my whole life, all the ads I've seen on TV, you just see flawless skin. And now I don't have flawless skin, and I can't find anything that works. And I bet there's a whole lot of other women out there that, maybe feel the same way. And so it was this kind of like entrepreneurial moment, I guess, of like, oh, if I can figure out, which by the way, Jennifer, I had no money, no connections, no idea of, didn't know anyone in the beauty industry.
Starting at zero. Yeah.
Starting at zero. But I got this knowing, right? For me, it's how I hear my faith. It's how I hear God, is like, I get this kind of knowing, this like internal, still small voice or nudge. And
absolutely.
Right. And I just felt like I'm supposed to do this. And this does not make sense in my head, but, and I can easily talk myself out of it. I thought I was in my dream job, but it was like, oh, I just have this knowing. And so I decided to listen to that. And I think one of the things I talk about in my book a lot is that sometimes knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after one. Yeah. And so this is the not romantic part, but on my honeymoon flight to South Africa in 2007, wrote the business plan to It Cosmetics with my husband. We both got back, we quit our jobs, and we dove all in. And for anyone in your community listening right now who maybe was in the same spot, I just thought, Jennifer, like, oh, if I pour every penny I have into creating a product that works, it's just going to sell. And then I realized I didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah. And it turned into 3 years from the time we launched our business in our living room. It turned into 3 years of no's from every single retailer that I love, like that I put on a pedestal. So Sephora, Ulta, QVC, the department stores, 3 years of no after no after no after no. It would be 3 years before we could afford to pay ourselves. And in those early years, and maybe a lot of people in your community can relate to this, like this is stuff you don't see on social media from people, right? But like in our journey, it was like, oh, it was hard. We couldn't afford to pay ourselves. We had to figure out how to do all the things that we didn't know how to do because we couldn't afford to hire anybody. So the start of launching this dream was really tough, and it was filled with rejection after rejection after rejection. And I had to keep going back to like that knowing of like, God, am I supposed to keep going? Because this is my gut wrong? Right. Because every time you keep getting knocked down and you keep getting rejected, it is so hard to trust yourself when you feel like it's what you're supposed to be doing. And so it was 3 years of that for me. And I just had to learn everything I could about the beauty space, which I didn't know anything about it going into it.
I'm so glad that you shared that with the audience, because you're absolutely right that what so many people just see is, the highlight reel that they're going to find on Google, and they don't see that 3 years of just kind of the drudgery and just the one step in front of another. And I know that you do have a new book out, by the way, which we're going to tell our listeners at the end where they can get that. But I know you talk in the book about rejection. I'm sure there was also a part of you that was like second guessing, like, did I actually hear from God? Because what my community knows, I always say, if you know when you're knower. So I love that you were talking about the knowing, because I always talk about knowing in my knower. But you knew when you're knower, but probably when you're getting no after no after no, you're also starting to question like, well, maybe I was crazy. Maybe this was a dumb idea. Maybe I didn't know after all. And so was that, your reality for a little while as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, I went through this big kind of journey of figuring out how to actually hear myself, because, I think what's really hard is and I think this is universal. I think we all hear self-doubt in our own head that gets really loud, our inner critic. And then all of a sudden, I was layered with lack of success, lack of proof that my idea was going to work. And when we're not getting traction in our own business, or when we're not getting the kind of traction in our online community or in the content we're putting out or in, the paintings we're creating, or it's so that lack of proof or lack of traction in our business, that to me, that's a whole nother layer that makes us then second guess trusting ourselves and if our gut is right. And then, another thing, I think this is also, oh gosh, I wish people, I talk a lot about this in the book, because I'm realizing people need to share this more, but a lot of us have friends or family around us that love us and that mean well, if we're blessed to have that, but yet they actually can't they can't see, they think we're crazy for launching a business.
They sure do.
Right? They don't understand our vision. They're seeing everything through the lens of their own self-doubt or their own experiences. Yes. And so you have the noise of all that around you, of often people that they unknowingly just want you to stay in your comfort zone and not go after your dream. They want you to go back to the job that's safe or whatever. So you have the circle around you that loves you, but then is speaking the stuff into you that's making you second guess it. You have lack of traction in your own business. I have my own self-doubt. And then I layered on top of this, and maybe so many people in your community will connect with this too, but I made the mistake often, and I would have to check myself. And I talk about my best friend, Natasha, in this book, who's one of the most amazing prayer warriors, which she would remind me of this. I made this mistake of putting these experts who I valued on a pedestal, meaning I love the department. Like when I was a Denny's waitress, I would save my tip money to buy a MAC lipstick or a Lancome eyeliner in these department stores. And I love Sephora and Ulta and QVC. And I put them on a pedestal, right? And when they were telling me no, and my idea is not going to work, or they don't believe in my vision, or I need to change my packaging or not use real women as models and all the stuff that they told me, I had to learn to put God on a pedestal, my own gut on a pedestal over these experts. And all of that combined to me. And it's funny because yes, It Cosmetics now is the largest makeup company in the country. Yes, all those things. But to me, that's not the victory. To me, the victory is, no matter the outcome, the victory that we're all on is, are we able to turn down the volume on our own self-doubt and our own inner critic? Are we able to love our friends and family from a distance, but maybe not let them kind of like speak
influence
into our
all
lives?
the things. Yes.
Can we put, our own intuition or God on a pedestal instead of, people that don't believe in us? And can we learn to trust ourselves? And like, I've made so many mistakes building It Cosmetics and just in my life in general. And I share all of those in the book too, for the first time ever. But the one thing that I did right when I look back on everything is, in so many critical moments when it didn't make sense in my head, I made the decision to trust that knowing, and to trust myself and go with it. And that, when we do that, because I believe we all have that, like you say, know your knower. I believe we all
know when you're knower.
That. And I think it's always right. And I think the journey in life is learning to trust it. In order to become the person we're born to be. It sounds like
your book and my book are almost like sisters.
And I match your book right now. I match your book.
You are totally on brand for me. Absolutely. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you're seeing Jamie in the hot pink. So I love it.
What would you say to founders that perhaps don't want to be the face of the brand, or perhaps are worried around kind of, even if their face is too strong, they might not be able to sell that company, and then you had an incredible exit. Like what's your take there?
By the way, no one has ever asked me that question. And that is such a brilliant question because it is so important. I knew exactly what you're saying, Nathan, that like if we were too heavily key person dependent, right, we would never be able to be acquired or really truly have something that was sellable or even scalable in a lot of ways. And so two things. The first part of that question, I think it's perfectly fine if you're a founder and you want nothing to do with being the face of the brand. I think it's perfectly fine to find someone who can be, if you need that as part of your company. And how you do that. So I did that in my own company, and I did it very differently actually than most people do. So I'll share that piece in a moment. If you're like a founder that's like, how do I find someone who's the perfect face for the brand? But I do think you can do it that way. Find someone else and have it be fully authentic and have it be really powerful. You can find more than one person also. I knew early on, and this is a big blind spot for so many founders, which I'm fired up that you asked that question and realizing no one's ever asked that question. This is such a big blind spot for founders because they don't realize their business is them, which is not a business. That's, you know what I mean? But yet they're burnt out. A lot of times when your business is all you're burnt out, all of the things, right? And so, and when you're having great success, especially, success masks a whole lot of problems and a whole lot of inefficiencies, right? And key person dependency is one of those. And so early on, there were a couple things that we did, and one of them was realize really quickly, like, oh, you know, because after the moment we just talked about, when we had the big sellout of everything and all the stuff, you know, that one airing turned into 5 that year, 101 the next year, and eventually 250 live shows a year. There's only 365 days a year. That's a whole lot of time. And what was tricky was, and I was so burnt out, by the way, doing 100-hour weeks, plus like trying to do everything else, right? So we were scaling, and even though we were hiring rapidly, we were trying to, you know, preserve our culture. As we were hiring, I was still trying to myself sign off on every element of copy, write every story, every product name, create, you know, all the stuff, like a billion moving parts, not to mention all the other departments we were building out. So that's all going on. I was burnt out for a number of years, yet what was happening was QVC, who was our biggest channel for a long time, you know, they have a history of where when the founder steps off there and someone else goes on, that other person doesn't hit numbers. And all of a sudden the brand starts going down. So they did not want me to have anyone else go on. So there was this big pressure for a long time where we were dependent on them, right? So we had a business for a few years that was key person dependent on me going on air all the time, but then it was key channel dependent on QVC. So it was a double negative in terms of a healthy business. And so the good thing is, you know, we identified that really early, and you know, after, you know, and it wasn't for lack of trying, everyone else just said no forever, but eventually all of our success on QVC, other channels started wanting us, all of the department stores, all the beauty retailers. I did an infomercial that aired in the United States, and it was on while I was sleeping. So I was like, okay, we're selling product while I'm sleeping. This is great. So we had all these moving parts, but we still had the problem that it was key person dependent on me. So what I did, which was, I think, very different than what most people would do, because I've seen a lot of other founders, in like especially on QVC, they'll hire someone to take over their role, but they'll hire someone that is like a master at sales, or they poach in from another company because they're a superstar there, or whatever it might be. With that idea that you cannot fake authenticity and that customers are smart, I did it totally different. I took 3 people inside my organization who their lives were authentically changed by the product, like full evangelists, but they'll tell their neighbor at the coffee shop, but their lives were authentically changed by the product. I took 3 people internally, and I taught those people who had the authenticity piece, I taught them the TV and the sales piece. And it took a number of years. They started traveling to all my shows. We were on in Canada as well on the shopping channel there, and they would go to my US shows. And for 3 years, they shadowed me at every show as I taught them all of it, started putting them on air in Canada, where the sales goals were lower. Like, you wouldn't get kicked off right away. If you missed in the US, you get kicked off right away. And then eventually those 3 women took over the entire QVC business for me. And I had my head of marketing doing press for the brand instead of me for a while. And basically I did everything I could. This is the big takeaway for every founder. This intuitively feels scary, but when you can figure out how to replace yourself in every part of what you do the best you can, that's the healthiest your business will be. That's the most sellable your business will be. And you have to take your ego out of it. A lot of people are like, I am not replaceable, which is true for every founder. You really can't fully replace you. But the more you can show that there is no key person dependency, because here's the thing, Nathan, we met with L'Oreal for for 3 years. And they said, no, we met with other people and they thought our business was too key person dependent. A lot of times that's the reason you won't ever be able to get past, to get to the exit. And so we were able to solve that and able to show that the best we could, I had become as irrelevant as possible to the business, and that we had something that was scalable.
Tell these folks a little bit about starting, $1 billion company in your house on the floor, and maybe what's the mindset to go when you have all the doubt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the first and most important thing is doubt's so normal, right? Doubt, imposter syndrome, thinking, oh, do I have what it takes? Right. So anyone out there feeling that right now, it's universal. And Brendan, I don't know if you've had this experience, but the more people that I've looked up to for decades, some of the most incredible people in the world I've had the blessing of meeting now, they all say the same thing. They even still now, when they launch a new thing or a new network or a new anything, right? A book. They all actually deal with the same thing of, do I have what it takes? Am I enough? How will this be received? Is this going to matter? Do I belong? I mean, all those things that people don't want to admit they feel, we all feel them. Even people that it just blows me away and makes me feel less alone when I hear them share those things, which is why I love that we're, all coming together in community for Growth Day morning show, Monday through Friday. I see
people, Jamie, right now who are already on Facebook and on our Instagram comments here. I'm already seeing people saying, I started my dream on my kitchen table. I'm trying to do it. I have doubt, And by the way, everyone's saying good morning. So thank you guys. Good morning to you too. We hope you have a wonderful, encouraging, inspiring, passionate, fun day that you feel is like meaningful and purposeful. And if it doesn't feel like that, try to make it feel like that. No matter what you're doing, if you're doing the laundry today, or you're doing the accounting today, or you're doing the launching today, or you're just trying to take care of your team through remote work today, bring some joy to it, bring some meaning to it, because you got to start today. That's a blessing. You got that first breath today. You got another chance on this earth. You gotta, I screwed up yesterday, Jamie. I said something stupid to Denise. Y'all who don't know Denise, that's my wife. And it's like, I just screwed up. Is that
why you got a love note? I saw you posted a love note.
No, that's the worst thing. She posted me this beautiful, encouraging post-it. Yeah. And throughout the day, because it's a really hard week for us over here, which we're launching a lot of things. And then I screwed it all up. I don't know if have you all ever just screwed up a good day? I screwed up a good day and I feel bad about it. It was awful. And then like today, it's like, okay, it's a new day. I get to be a better husband today. I get to put better energy out there. I get to like deal with my stress in a better way that doesn't like put on other people. And so we all have the ability to start each day fresh. Even for those of you who were hurt yesterday, you screwed up yesterday. I do that all the time. That's like half my days. But you wake up and you go, okay, do better today, Brendan. Do better today. That's what we mean when we say every day is a good day to grow. You get to start over. You get to see things fresh. You get to be more focused. You get to give more energy. And that's a big part of, starting new things. Because, you're going to have a terrible day when you start your business. You got to get up the next day and go. Yeah. The team's not going to be awesome one day. Next day, give them the credit and go. And, that's so important. I know you felt that when you started too, Jamie.
Yeah. And I don't know what you did yesterday to mess up. But what I do know is the note you posted, which was so beautiful, it inspired me. It actually reminded me, like my husband, Paulo, has been so supportive in this book launch journey. I haven't done 100-hour weeks in years, and I'm all of a sudden back to 100-hour weeks with like all the stuff, right? All the stuff, as you know, in the middle of launch, right? You're right in there right now too. And he has been so supportive. And when I saw you post that note yesterday, it actually reminded me, I need to also remember and do a better job at just showing appreciation and just even writing a post-it note. You know what I mean? So I don't know what you did.
If you didn't see it, Denise left me this beautiful note on my door and just said she loved me and appreciated me and knows we're doing big things. And it's just, you know what, when it's a really busy and difficult time, showing support, she's so good at that. I'm not as good. So she's just awesome. I said she's too wonderful because I don't deserve a girl good. So very, very lucky guy. And, you know, I think Denise and I, very much like you and Paulo, we literally started from scratch, like super build a dream things. She started exercise studios and built them up to just powerhouses. I started, you know, teaching on the internets and, you know, none of it, we didn't know how to do any of it.
Yeah.
We just didn't know how. And that's the thing. Some of you are stopping because you don't know how. I'm like, just get in the game. You figure it out in motion. So.
Yes. And you know, there's this whole idea of how you never feel ready. You know what I mean? And I remember when, you know, I was like, oh, is now the right time to start a family? And everyone kept saying, oh, you'll never feel like it's the right time, right? Like meaning there's
Right.
you're busy or this or that. And then I would say the same thing often when we're launching a dream or going after a dream. It's so easy to talk ourselves out of it and go, oh, well, I'm not ready yet. Or, oh, I need to learn more, this, that. Or I kind of feel like you never get to that place where you're ever in life, really, where you're like, oh, I know it all now. And I'm like, you know, it's just, so I think if anyone's making that excuse in their own head, like just go for it. Because we're all showing up messily. Even my theory, just because I've now had the blessing of seeing behind the scenes of so many businesses and mentoring so many other women and so many other, you know, amazing entrepreneurs out there, nobody's ready. Like
No one's ready.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what? The best sign of immaturity is to not expect uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
The best sign of immaturity is to not expect uncertainty. It's like we think, oh, one day that goes away and I get it and I know how to do things and everything's perfect. And it's like, no, maturity says, I know there's so much I don't know. I have humility to the fact I don't know how to do most things. I have humility to the fact I don't know how today's going to go because someone else is in charge. Thank you, God. And so that humility is part of maturity. The added thing of maturity equals humility plus the trust to go on anyway. Like that's the trust to go on anyway and be responsible for one's own actions and responsibilities and reactions. That's maturity, right? Maturity says, I'm humble. I don't think I'm everything like you think when you're 20 years old or 19 or when ego or narcissism takes over. You have humility. And then you also have the trust to go on. That's maturity. Like the trust, resilience is a big part of maturity. And then owning one's own reactions, owning one's own thing. Like I said, I screwed up last night. Denise didn't. I did. I own that. Like that is part of being hopefully a mature husband. It's like just going, oh, I own my reactions. My reactions were not good.
I don't know what you did. I just hope my husband Paula's watching because you're actually owning it. I don't know what you did. But I'm hoping Paula's watching you own it and be like, it's on me. I did it. I'm hoping you're setting an example right now. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too. It's like the one reason people don't do that is because you have to be able to forgive yourself. You know, it's like I used to be, I don't know if you all do this with your spouses and your partners. If I messed up anything, I did it with my team forever. If I made a mistake with my team or I did a bad job at work or, you know, something crashed on the internet when I was teaching or I didn't reply perfectly to a customer and they came back and I felt I would like, what's that word? Ruminate on that. I would stew on that for like a day or two and it would really upset me because I couldn't forgive myself. And I was like, oh man, I need to learn to forgive myself as much as I forgive other people. I need to learn to forgive myself as much as I trust in God, as much as I trust, you know, part of faith is letting go of yesterdays, right? Part of faith is letting go of yesterdays. And so I just got to let go of yesterday, show up and do a better job today and earn some more Post-it notes of love. So,
well, I think, you know, on this whole journey of, you know, everyone starting their dream, I think those are big things because mindset, how we handle ourselves messing up, how we handle mistakes. You know, I have people close in my life that have a very hard time saying I'm sorry or I made a mistake and when they start to do the work in therapy and all that, they realize, oh, when I was little and I would mess up, you know, if they made a mistake, they were taught that they were the mistake. They were taught they were bad, not that what they did was bad, right? And so we're all on this journey of of figuring all that out. And, one thought, Brendan, I want to share also on the whole idea of starting your dream. I think another thing that can get in our own way or hold us back is just this idea of do we have what it takes? Are we enough? Do we belong? And one thought that keeps popping in my head, and then one story to share, because I look at this journey I sort of just came out of, right? I started It Cosmetics in my living room, couldn't afford to hire anyone for years. So I was trying to do every job.
Raise your hand if you're doing it all right now.
Yeah, raise your hand.
If you're just you're doing it, you're the ultimate do-it-yourselfer. That's what happens when you start something new. You're the do-it-yourselfer. So anyway.
Yeah, well, and you know what? There's no shame in that game. Listen, that's how you got to do what you got to do. And Paulo, me, eventually we hired one of my closest friends of over 20 years. She was in my wedding, a bridesmaid, and she was 6 months pregnant at the time. She was our first full-time employee. But all of us, we were doing everything we didn't know how to do because we couldn't afford to hire anyone. And it was like Googling. I mean, this sounds crazy. Now that I know more, this sounds crazy, but Googling, FDA regulatory compliance and writing packaging and all the things that
Google,
you just
thank you, Google.
Thank you, Google. And one thing I want to share actually with everyone, I believe this famous quote is by Dr. Seuss, I believe. But if anyone out there is feeling like they're a little odd, or they're trying to hide the parts of them that are weird or that might not be accepted in the industry they're in, or they might be tempted to conform. Maybe someone's starting a coaching business and they're like, oh, well, maybe I need to kind of conform a little bit to get more clients, or are people going to love me for me? All those thoughts we have, no matter what dream you're starting. And there's that Dr. Seuss quote that says, you have to be odd to be number one. And when I think back about that, I want to share a quick story in case someone needs to hear this today, that they have to be odd to be number one.
And you know what? Hold on one second, Jamie, because that's so good. Y'all, here's what I want you to do. If you're getting any value from these morning shows right now, tag up a friend. Take a friend right now who you know is starting this dream, or who needs a little personal growth and encouragement, or how to fight with their spouse last night and they're trying to repair, or someone who needs some relationship advice. So if you tag them right now, then what happens is they'll see this replay. And so if you get them in, that will help them see the replay. So if we covered something that would be helpful, but also take someone who is chasing their dream, who's starting something, invite them in here today, because if you don't know Jamie's story, she literally started from scratch, built the $1 billion company called It Cosmetics. And here she is, she's sharing, hey, you kind of have to be odd. So tag all your odd friends.
Yes.
Take up all your weirdos, all your odd friends, take up your tribe, take up your team, let them know, just get them in the game. I mean, this is your chance every day with us in Growth Day. Our hope is we bring a little bit of empathy and encouragement and direction to your growth journey, to you being a better person, showing up better, making it happen. And you know what? People like us in personal development, we feel odd. The fact that you would watch a show like this to inspire yourself to have a good day, you're weird. You're like us
already.
You're our growth crew right here. This is our growth crew with us today, Jamie. That's what I'm going to start calling the Growth Day members. It's our growth crew. We're in this crew together. We're growing together.
I wanted to ask you about something that I think has affected you. I know it's affected you, but so many people listening have this in their life, and maybe they shove it in the back of their mind, but it's still there. And that is this idea of labels. And what I mean is, so many of us have had, maybe it's when we were kids, someone called us a name, or we're in a situation and someone says, oh, but you're not smart enough, or you don't have what it takes, or you're the wrong fit for this, or you don't come from the right family, or this, that, the other thing. And a lot of times we then find ourselves as an adult, and that label is stuck and it's taken root, and now it's sort of coming out in our lives, and we haven't even thought about it in years, but it's still there, that identity. When you were, I think it was 8 years old, you were called Eddie Spaghetti. Eddie Spaghetti. Can you share how that happened and how you did or didn't let that label take root?
Yeah, I talk about this in the book a lot too, is that, and how to overcome it, which I have. That part of me, I've leveraged into something pretty strong. But I talk about in the book that a lot of the beliefs we have about ourselves were installed in us, our identities, these thoughts and concepts we believe to be most true about us, our worth, they were installed in us when we were defenseless as kids. So it's like, be a good boy, be quiet, be a good girl, don't do that, don't make too much noise, don't, and you start to develop this identity when you're young, and then when you get out into the world, because you believe it, you confirm it, and then you gather more and more references for it, and before you know it, you're 20 or 30 or 35 years old, and it's who you are. And you've proven it because of this. Your identity is the most powerful force in the world. You're going to be consistent with it. And most of what you believe about yourself, you weren't in control of believing. It was put there when you were a child. Well, same with me. So you have this combination of this kid who's at home, things aren't real stable there most of the time. Sometimes I feel like I overcook that too, because when it was good, it was very loving. And the other thing is I had this loving mother 100% of the time, right? 100% of the time. And great grandparents and lots of great stuff, but there was this thing, right? So you have that anxiety going in chaos, going to school, I'm a little guy, I'm shy. I'm very, very shy. You know this about me to this day. I'm still very introverted, which surprises most people because of the speaking and stuff in the show, but I'm super introverted. And I just started to get picked on. And this Eddie Spaghetti, your meatballs, right? And the class would sing it to me and they'd see me get upset. And it started to develop into this pattern of you're not good enough all the time. And then I remember, you know, a few years later, a baseball coach, really, I was become a pretty good player, but we had a great player on our team who went on to play like Major League Baseball for many, many years. He's still a really good friend of mine. And I had a couple bad games and I was down. And our coach pulled me into his office. He was sort of a mean dude. He's a good dude, but he was a tough dude. And he pulled me into his office. He goes, hey, Eddie Spaghetti, this is now I'm a teenager. And he goes, did you ever think that maybe you're just not as good as him? Like you going 0 for 3, like you can go 0 for 3, he can't. So why don't you just accept the fact you're just not that good? This was my coach, right? And I remember just walking out of there like, whoa. And then I've shared with you another story that when I became a speaker, someone that I looked up to was like, you know, you're really not that good. You know, like I can't even listen to you for more than about 15 minutes. And then, I used to think is there something on me that's like, you can just punch me? Like, is there something about me? Like people think they can just tell me these things about me. What is it about me? Because other people aren't, what I found out is other people are hearing similar things. And the truth is, I just started to go, I actually asked myself a question that I say in the book. I don't really believe that many good things about myself. What would I need to believe about me that would serve me? What would I actually need to believe about me that would cause me to change the way I show up in the world? What would I need to believe? And all of a sudden, I started to really think about that. How would that guy walk? How would that guy talk? I'm doing an impersonation of this insecure guy. I'm doing an impersonation of a shy person. I'm doing an impersonation of someone who doesn't have confidence. It's an impersonation. It's not who I really am. Well, maybe I could begin to impersonate the person I want to be. And I actually started to impersonate him a little bit. Not fake it, but like, you know what? He'd walk with his shoulders back. His voice would be a little bit deeper than the one I'd walk around with. He'd think certain things about himself. Moreover, he would treat other people a particular way. He would treat other people in a kind and generous and strong way, almost in an overabundance of kindness and generosity to people, and belief and love for people. And a lot of that happened when I worked at the orphanage. I was like, now that's the guy I like. That's the guy that I am. I'm the giving guy. I'm the kind guy. And you know what? I found out when I did that, I took it away from me, as we said earlier, it was about other people, that I found a lot more peace. So I just started to become that person, and slowly but surely, I think I am that person.
That is really powerful. There's, I'm sure, so many people, I'm sure they'll send messages about this, who, you know, see you online, watch your content, and maybe think that everything's perfect.
Right.
And think that you're just born with all this confidence and with, you know, everyone loving you and millions of people following you, even through grade school, right? I mean, we tend to think those things about people that we don't yet know deeply. And then we think when those things happen to us, like someone tells us we're just not good enough, we kind of hide it because we're embarrassed by it, or we think it doesn't happen to other people. And I feel like you sharing that is so powerful.
Thank you. I think I have a lot of people from high school actually that follow me now, right? When you're, and I think if you were to ask a lot of them, because they've told me this, I just wasn't, I think they would just say to you, like, I wouldn't expect it to be an Eddie. You know, not like he was a complete, I was just there, if that makes any sense. Like, no, I would not, there was no like most likely to succeed in any of my, you know, yearbooks or anything like that. But I don't think by the time I graduated, it wasn't like he's a complete dum-dum, but it was just like, he's just Eddie Milet, you know, he's just Eddie. Like, you would never suspect he would be the person that, you know, might reach a lot of human beings in his life. You know, you just would never have predicted that. And that ought to give everybody hope. If you're not one of those people that everyone's like, no, for sure it's her.
Yeah.
I was definitely not that person. You go, oh, just mark it down. He's going to do something great with his life. No, no one was saying that about me. No one. No teacher, no coach. Maybe a couple teachers when I was a little guy, but most people would not have said that anything significant was ever going to happen.
So good. They didn't know you were the one.
That's right.
They didn't know. And that's powerful, because a lot of people are wondering, am I the one? Can I be the one? No one's telling me I'm the one.
And I think the fact that you doubt, I think the fact that you doubt or wonder whether you're the one is indicative of the fact that you probably are.
Woo!
I do. I just believe that.
That's so good.
And you know this, and by the way, the reason it's good is because you know that to be true about you.
I know that's true, but I've never thought about it that way. I know that's true. And I'm just thinking right now, I have goosebumps thinking about how many people are listening to this. And right now they know that they're wondering if they're the one.
Yeah, and that makes you probably the one. Yes, that's right. And you know this because it happened in your life.
Yes, that is huge. All right.
This is good.
I want to talk about, you know, story. Can you share with everyone this story? I feel like someone needs to hear this today about your first grade teacher.
Yeah, Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'll even elaborate on it a little bit. So I had no confidence at all, and I was getting picked on. This is what I think happened. Mrs. Smith was just a super, really kind lady, and we had moved to the town that we were in then, and so I was also a new kid. On top of being small, on top of being Eddie Spaghetti, on top of being insecure, on top of leaving many mornings where my dad maybe didn't come home the night before, or there was just turmoil the night before. I'm just leaving that house, this little dude. I wish I could go back and hug him, you know, which my mom did a lot of, by the way. And so she knew that I just had no self-esteem. And I believe she orchestrated this entire thing, but we were doing testing like for grades and stuff, for the next grades. And she purposely had, I believe she purposely did this for me. She had someone come in the back of the room and say, Mrs. Smith, we need your smartest student to come take a test to represent the class. And I could see the person in the back, I heard them. And I watched Mrs. Smith go, that's Eddie Milet. I would pick Eddie, he's the smart boy. And she picks me, and I remember going, oh my gosh, she thinks I'm the smart boy. And I just looked at her and she smiled at me. And I remember just lighting up. And then the person goes, okay, then Eddie Milet, you need to come with us. And I stood up, and it was the first time ever in my life that I was like, I'm special. This is special. And I walked up and went to the back, and I took the test, and I guess I did well. But when I came back in, I didn't say this on the last time I told this. When I came back in, at the end of the day, class was over, and Mrs. Smith said, Eddie, can you come up here for me? And I came up, and she hugged me. And she goes, you're so special and so smart. You're the smartest boy. She just like hugs on me for a minute. And it really changed my life a lot. It changed my life because that was the first time I was like, well, maybe they're wrong. Maybe I am smart. Maybe I am special. And this beautiful soul knew exactly what she was doing. She orchestrated all that. She knew there was this child. I think she had this sense something was going on in my home, because kids don't come like that to school, that shy, that timid, unless something's wrong at the house. And I'm telling you the truth that I've thought about that like hundreds, maybe thousands of times in my life, that event in my life. What a beautiful, beautiful soul she was. So that's Mrs. Smith. It's one of those people, you know, in your life when you close your eyes and you go, there's this handful of humans that make you feel special, make you feel loved and cared for and believed in. And she's on that highlight reel of like maybe 3 or 4 human beings in my entire 51 years. And the reason that that's important is because I've tried really hard in my life to be that person for other people. That they go, he loves me, he cares about me, maybe even as important, he believes in me. And then you show people how to live a little better. And that's exactly what she did. She was a super, super special person. And little did she know that little first grade dude would, be on a show with you today. So.
Last night when we were talking on the phone about this idea about how many people don't feel seen.
Yeah.
And I'm just imagining like the power, right, of her seeing you.
First time anyone saw me. I was telling you last night that a lot of my work in my life has been, I don't know why it makes me so emotional, but a lot of my work in my life has been about helping people that perform pretty well perform their best. And the more and more I've been doing what I do, the more it's occurring to me that my role is a little different. And that is that there's millions and millions and millions of people, maybe more than ever in the world, that were like the first grader, me, but they're 30 years old.
Here's the thing, you've done such amazing things with It Cosmetics. And I know, we've talked a little bit about it this year. We're working on, inspiring people to go after 1 million dreams together, to help each other, all of that. And I think it's so easy to look at somebody like yourself and say, okay, you took something from scratch. Literally, you and your husband, Paulo, started in your living room and you eventually sold it for over $1 billion. It would be easy for people to say, oh my gosh, she probably wanted a cosmetics company when she was 2. Maybe she started when she was 5, right? But that was not necessarily the dream to start with. Tell us a little bit of how this blossomed.
Yeah, it wasn't the dream at all. And I get messages every single day, usually on Instagram, saying, did you get lucky? Did you have connections? It's like, no, none of that. And I realize so often we just see the outcomes of things when they're, or the highlight reel. And that's why I'm excited to do your show and also just write this book. Cause I think like sharing the real journey helps everyone else when they're launching their own dream, or maybe they're scared to go after their own dream, helps them feel less alone. So yeah, one thing you've talked about in one of your shows about this idea of sometimes our setbacks become our setups.
Yes.
That's really what happened to me when I launched this dream in my living room. And just to share a little bit about that, just for anyone in your community listening right now, especially if like they're they're in the season of setback or in the midst of a setback,
right?
That's really how this whole thing started. So I thought I was working in my dream job. And, since I was a little girl, I always would, sit in my living room and watch Oprah. And I always thought like, oh, one day I'm going to share other people's stories with the world. Like I always want to do that. And I was working in television news as a news anchor, and thought I was in my dream job. And I started going through a season of setback, what I thought was a big setback. I got a skin condition called rosacea, which my skin is bright, it gets bright red with bumps everywhere. Sometimes it feels like sandpaper. And so I went to the dermatologist and I learned there's no cure for it. And I'd be anchoring the news. I tried all this stuff to try and calm it down, but I'd be anchoring the news and often live. While I'd be on the air in my earpiece, I would hear from my producer, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off. You need to wipe it. And I knew.
Which I'm sure totally helped you to focus and calm down, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and then it's like when we go through these times, I started this kind of season of self-doubt where I would, like, my inner critic got so loud, and I would be live anchoring the news thinking things like, am I going to get fired? Am I losing our viewers, changing the channel? I went through this whole season, started trying to find any makeup product out there. I never had even an interest in going in creating a beauty company. But I started, trying every product out there, and none of them would work. And I had this kind of moment where I had this kind of this gut feeling. Like, I think when dreams start to brew in us, or when there's like a seed planted in us where we have this dream, it kind of started that way, where I was like it was like a little inkling, like, wait a minute, if I could figure out how to launch it, how to create a product that works for me, I bet it'd help a lot of other people. Yeah. And then I would kind of like silence that dream, and my head would take over, oh, Jamie, you have no connections. You have barely any money. You don't know anything about the beauty industry. And you're in your dream job right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so I went through that battle. And I think everyone listening to us right now, probably like really, if they get still, they probably know right now, if there's a dream on their heart or something they know or they're supposed to create or go after or offer the world or start painting again or start dancing, right? They kind of know. But sometimes our head talks ourselves out of our own dreams.
Yeah.
So
We
I
call
was
that
in a
that
moment.
essence of a dream, right? Like that, because I think sometimes even the word dream, it feels too heavy, too big. Like people are like, oh, I can't go after that dream, or I don't know all that's there or all that it will take. And it's like, all right, we'll just lean into that essence of the dream. And I love how you gave yourself that permission to first kind of look solutions for yourself, but then to be able to say, what if? What if? And I love too how it seems like very quickly after that, you also started to say, what if we did it differently? Because that was really something you started to do very early on, to be able to say, hey, a lot of the marketing, a lot of the ads around cosmetics don't seem to be all that real or for real women. And I love how that really started to become a mission for you as well. How quickly after getting the essence of the dream and starting to walk it out, was that why of being able to say, all right, this is, I'm doing this for someone else too. How soon did that happen for you?
Yeah, I realized in the midst of like, why can't I find anything that works for me? When I started trying to, try all these products, I realized, oh, wow, my whole life, I've never seen anyone in the ads that looks like me, that has skin problems, right? You just see Photoshopped ads. And I kind of realized that there was never a product that works for me, but also never a product that even showed people with skin like me. And I want to say something that you said in the very open of our conversation that I think is really powerful, especially for anyone listening. You said, maybe you've never sat at the cool kids club or the cool kids table at school. Right. And I just want to say, for anyone who feels like they don't fit in, or they maybe don't belong, or they're not like everyone else, I really believe, Mitch, that can be your superpower. Because I think like I came into this beauty industry and I didn't fit in, and I was not, I didn't realize launching this company how it would be 3 years of being told no from all the retailers. And because everyone sees, oh, wow. Because, today at this moment that you and I are talking right now, It Cosmetics is the largest luxury makeup company in the country, which is insane. It's because amazing. For 3 years, every beauty retailer said, no, you're not the right fit. Women won't buy makeup from models that look like that. On and on and on. Change your packaging, right? And I think that why we eventually were acquired by L'Oreal for so much money is because we ended up doing something so different that and unique and odd, that didn't fit in, but that people connected with, that it ended up being valuable to them. And I just think so many people listening right now, we're always told often in our lives to fit in and to conform. And sometimes when we fit in, it can actually be a disadvantage in a way, because we start thinking the same. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I just sorry, that just like came out, because I just think anyone feeling like they don't fit in, I think if you stick to who you are authentically, I really feel like that is when you step into the calling on your life, right? And I think it's so tempting for us to because we all want love, we all want connection, we all want those things, and it's tempting to do it at the price of who we are. And when I look back at this journey, about turning a dream into something that impacted now millions of lives, I think that there were moments when people told me to change what we were doing, that was never going to work, that if I wanted to get in their stores, I had to do it the way they wanted me to do it. And those are the moments that I think could have stopped this whole thing from happening had I listened. You know what I mean? And I don't know, just want to share that.
Well, I love that. I love that one, you would hone in on that, because I so agree with that. But also I think that you make that point so well, in the book of being able to take those things that maybe you've seen as your limitations or your doubts or the things that have caused you fear, that if we just look at those a little bit differently, they literally can be our superpower. And I agree with you. I think, I mean, especially with the story, and I confessed to you before we hit record that I've not worn your makeup. I'm not an expert on the cosmetic industry, all of those things. But what I love about your story, and the more that I've dug into it, it truly is, obviously you've put together an incredible product, but the way that you've gone about it and doing it differently, which I think in some ways you had to like bolster yourself. You had to push through those no's. Those no's made you even more like, I don't know if it's the right word to say solid, but to be able to say, hey, we are choosing this. We are not doing this by accident. We are not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because we feel like that's the right way to do it. And that's bolstered you to help you then navigate the storm. And I do want to say that, some people might hear this and go, oh my gosh, they went from their living room to selling it, the company to L'Oreal for $1 billion. It's like, oh, that's an overnight story. It's all those things. You guys, we're talking about hundreds of hours a week, working hard, paying yourself very little to nothing, and really fighting for this dream, which I think is also beautiful. And you've also surrounded yourself with incredible people. Now, I've gotten some questions from listeners. We're going to go after those in just a second. But one of the things is, I think what I loved about your story is that, so many things about your story, but you got the essence of the dream. You started to experiment. You saw the need. You saw the need to offer a product, but also promote that product, present that product in a different way. But I was curious, because so many people get the essence of the dream and immediately see the list of things they don't know or don't have, right? What's one of the ways, do you think, like, what was key for you to give yourself that permission to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the connections. I certainly don't have the big bank account. What gave you, or how did you find that within yourself to be able to say, but I'm going to take that next step?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, and I talk about this and believe it a lot, that I think sometimes knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after one.
Yeah.
And while I was in that spot of going, okay, my gut, my essence, so to speak, is telling me to launch this company, but my head is saying you're not qualified.
Right.
You don't have the right connections, all that. When I look back, and by the way, when you talk about, the early years, it was 3 years of hundreds of no's. And we got, we couldn't afford to pay ourselves the first 3 years of our company. If we ever had a date night, which was a miracle, we would go literally to the Costco, the outdoor Costco concession stand. We get $1 hot dogs.
Yeah. You can get a lot for a couple of bucks at the Costco. That's exactly right.
At least, and it tastes good, which is the good part. But that would be a date night. I mean, it was really tough. And there were so many nights I cried myself to sleep because it was another big no from a retailer, or I didn't know how we were going to keep the lights on. It was a lot of years. And in the book, and believe it, I go into details about like some of the scrappy things we did, like how, we figured out how to do things when we couldn't afford to hire people. And I go into that because I think it's so important, because you don't see that stuff on social media. You just see everyone's highlight reel. And I just think like, it's important for people that might, feel like it's just them struggling or not getting traction or hearing rejection after rejection. And when I look back at all of this, and I talk about so many things I did wrong in the book, but one of the things that I did do right, it wasn't that I somehow was smarter than someone else or anything like that. It was really that when I would get still and I would hear my own gut feeling, which for me is how I hear God talk to me, is in my intuition, right? But some people may call it the universe. Some people might call it just their own internal knowing, right? When I would hear that internal knowing, I would make the decision to trust it. And for me, that was one of the biggest things, because there were nights I literally would just cry myself to sleep. And I'd wake up in the morning thinking like, oh, was that huge rejection from QVC really real, or was that a dream? And then I'd realize it was real.
Very real.
And I'd be like,
very,
no.
very real.
And I mean, there were some really tough rejections about 2 years into the business, we got a call from a potential investor that was a big private equity company. And I was so excited because they had a huge track record of making all of these products in grocery stores, big household names. And they loved our product, and they wanted a meeting, and we did a meeting, and then we showed them our product pipeline. And, we were several meetings in, and I thought, wow, if they invest in us, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. And B, maybe they can use their connections to get us in these big beauty retailers that keep telling me no. And we got down to the final meeting, and I'll never forget this moment, because my husband and I flew up for this meeting, and we were standing about 3 feet from the head investor. And he says to me, congratulations. We really, really think your product is fantastic. But it's a no, we're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And we want to wish you all the best. And when I said, okay, can you tell me why? Because feedback is usually a gift. And he was literally about 3 feet from me in person. And he says, do you want me to be really, really honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. Wow. And I remember, Mitch, in that moment, here's the thing. So 2 things. One, I went out in the car and cried later, but I instantly felt, like a lifetime of self-doubt and body doubt. All those things kind of flood my body. But I'll never forget this moment when he was saying that to me. Of course it hurt. Yeah. But when he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight, I got this feeling inside, and I can remember it like it was yesterday, that just said, he's wrong. Yeah. And I actually never got mad or it was weird. When you talked about the why earlier, because we all identify, it's so important to attach a why to any dream. But I did the work early on of identifying, like, really, why am I doing this company? And it wasn't just to create a great product or to solve my own problems or to help other women, which was certainly all those things, but I wanted to shift culture in the beauty industry. I wanted to create a business where if I ever were going to make it, I wanted to use models that were all different ages and skin tones and skin and sizes and skin challenges. And I wanted to shift that definition of beauty for every little girl out there who was about to see these ads and start doubting herself the way I did growing up, and every grown woman who still does and person who still does. So I knew how important my why was to me. Yep. So when this guy says to me that, I realized, instead of getting mad, I think this is really important when we're going after our dreams, to not take rejection personally, because I realized him saying that to me, him passing on investing in my business, was really, he was just as much impacted by a life of the beauty industry as I was. Yep. He was making an investment decision based on what he thinks you need to look like to sell product. And so, and one more thing.
I love it. No.
Well, 6 years, I didn't hear from him for about 6 years. And 6 years later, when L'Oreal acquired our company, because it was such a big deal and L'Oreal's public, they disclosed the purchase price. So all of a sudden, in this one day, it's all over the Wall Street Journal homepage, everywhere. Like, IT Cosmetics, but L'Oreal buys IT Cosmetics for $1.2 billion cash, this whole big thing. And I heard from him that day for the first time in 6 years. And he said, congratulations, I'm so happy for you. I was wrong, this whole thing. And I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history. But the other thing, and this is just, I want to share this in case anyone listening to you and me right now, like, is in this season of rejection, right? Is there's these famous words, and I don't even know who said them, but they're famous words that say, rejection is God's protection. Yeah. And like, when we're going through rejection, we don't, like, doesn't feel very good. Doesn't feel right at the time. Like, how is this protecting me? Especially when it's unfair, it's hurtful, it sucks. But like, and I have so many examples of this in Believe It, but the book, but just this one story is like, had he believed in me, Mitch, I was so desperate. I probably would have given him most of the company for almost no money. Yep. But because he didn't believe in me, 6 years later, my husband and I were still the largest shareholders when we sold to L'Oreal. And it just, I don't know. I just think that there's so many stories like that where I just think it's important that we have our perspective of faith also when we're going through those tough seasons.
Well, and I so agree, because it is that whole thing of, and I think you and I share a very similar faith, which is awesome. And we've got people from all different faith backgrounds, but it is, it is so powerful when we start to realize that those setbacks, sometimes that adversity, although it is brutal when you're in it, like I can only imagine that felt like a real punch to the gut. But
Yeah.
think about, like you said, that adversity in some ways is something you needed to dig even deeper. In some ways, it like proved your thesis even more of saying this absolutely needs to be fixed. And if somebody's going to do it differently, we got to do it. Right. And I also, it did also protect you from then giving up a majority stake and all of those things. It's just incredible, but it's not easy, but it's amazing. And I agree with you. You have so many different examples. And that's, I think I loved it in the book. So many different examples where that adversity, that setback, time and time again, really was a setup.
Our week's theme this week, Jamie, has been how to increase focus and discipline and drive, especially when it's hard. What's something that you have found as you've been launching Believe It that helped you with the focus, because it's so much work?
It's so much work. I mean, for me, I always try to bring it back to why am I doing what I'm doing, right? Like the bigger thing that's not about me. Also, you know, you and I are both, and by the way, most everyone on this morning show with us live, I think you coined this phrase. What did you say? Personal growth, personal development, personal growth, dorks, or personal, like geeking out on personal development. I've gotten so many messages about that. People are like, I'm a personal growth. I love to geek out on that stuff too. And I, you know, have loved this stuff my whole life. So I do it for myself and my downtime. I love it. And on the topic of focus, this morning, all alone in my hotel room, it's day 17. I've been in this hotel room doing the event, because I came out a week early to prep for the event and then the book launch stuff. And so I was in here reading actually quotes this morning about focus. And one of them that I read, I just want to share with everybody. I just thought it was so powerful, right? Because I just had this big thing happen. Getting the New York Times bestseller list. So just to give I guess, Brendan, let me just go there, because you and I just kind of peel back the curtain and let everyone in on this Growth Day morning show. And so what happened last night was I got this big phone call, and then it turned into a Zoom, and all of the people from the publisher and Simon & Schuster and everyone was on this big Zoom cheersing. Everyone's excited. And then right away comes up talk about book number 2. And right, I know. And then I won't even say who called me. Okay, how do I not get in trouble? Okay, a couple people then called me after, and they're like, and then the next book, and I'm just like, whoa. And I just want to bring this up for a reason, because I always talk about our own growth and our own growth journey. I am making the decision right now to focus on not doing this to myself again, meaning, so many times, right? So many times we have a win in the day, and maybe that win is that we went on our morning walk. Maybe that win is that, but then it's so easy for our own selves or other people to be like, well, what about this, or what's next, or what, right? And I did that to myself for a decade. Like in the decade of building my company, you know, for so many years we had no success and no money and no traction. But when we finally started getting it, and we finally started getting big wins and all these things, and, you know, the beauty industry that always discounted me all of a sudden was giving me all these awards, and all this stuff was happening. And I never stopped to appreciate it and feel it and celebrate it. It was always like, oh, but what about this? And what about that? And I just think that it applies to our lives every single day when it comes to focus, is that it's so easy and other people will do this to us, right? They'll say, oh, but you know, what's next? And, oh, you got that? Well, what about that, right? And then all of a sudden, before we know it, we're not even able to feel the day. We're just thinking about the things that, you know, we can still keep going for, or that help other people more, whatever it is. And we end up feeling not enough where we're at with what we have. And I just think that focusing on the victories too is really important, you know, and sometimes the victory is just not eating the Oreos. You know what I mean? Like that's a victory, like picking up the berries when you don't want to, like if you're blessed enough to have berries, and then being like, wow, I'm blessed to have berries, right? Like that's a victory. But how many times are we just we're there's so much going on that we end up focusing on what we don't have. And I just had this, you and I both, I think, are really sharing with everyone in connection and community on this show, not just the things we've learned and the things we teach and the things we coach others on. Like, I've had the blessing of mentoring now so many entrepreneurs and so many women. And yeah, we teach all those things too. But also what I love is we really go there and in addition to teaching stuff, we really go there and share what's actually going on in their own lives. And I just want to share that with everyone in the community today, because maybe somebody needs to hear this too. Is last night I had a moment of, oh wait, everyone else has already moved on. And like, they're like, okay, what's next? Book number 2. I'm like, whoa, like, I'm intentionally deciding right now, I'm not doing a book number 2 at this moment. I'm intentionally deciding, how can I inspire and impact and be in this moment and connect with real human beings who need the stories in this book, who need hope and inspiration? How can I show up and serve right now and be grateful where I'm at and feel the moment? And so it was a big moment of realization about focus last night. And I just want to share that because I think I've failed to do that for a number of years. And
always that next thing, chasing that next thing is so exhausting. And it also, I'll share with this because I know those calls. Been blessed to have 6 of them in my career now. And let me share the biggest mistake of all of it is that what happens is people focus on the blips. They're like, oh, I got this thing. I mentored one woman one time who she got on the Today Show, and everyone in her life was like, oh my God, you got on Today Show. You did it. Yes, celebrate victory today. And she's like, that's an appearance. That's a start. She was focused on the mission. So the show was the blip, right? Everyone sees the blip, celebrates the victory, celebrates the blip. But to make something real, you have to choose in your life, okay, am I going to focus on those little blips and that's done, that's completion, next thing, next product, next thing, or am I going to make a blockbuster? That's the thing. The thing about focus too is it's not just about not going on the next thing because it feels terrible, which it does, and going on the next thing too fast because you don't get to celebrate it. It's also, if you just bounce from project to project to project, you never take anything deep. It doesn't form roots. It doesn't become a thing ingrained in people's lives. It's like Apple didn't need to make 4,000 products. It was like, we're gonna make 5 and we're gonna dominate with these 5. It's like, we're gonna stick to the things and spend time on them to cultivate them, to grow them. Books are like that. Yeah, I'm still promoting High Performance Habits. It came out 3.5 years ago. And it's still selling equally as good because I still perpetuate the book and I tell the story in the emails and our Facebook groups and everything. I think it's, if you've got something and it's working, sometimes it's like, let's double down on that. Let's grow that. Let's make that the thing instead of, oh, let's go plant 7 more fields right now. It's like, let's cultivate this field and let's heal this field. Let's be part of it. Let's grow something we're proud of and set roots on something. I feel like we live in a very distracted next society and no one's building roots. So that's why we lack a society that has any significant missions, any significant movements, because no one sits with it and cultivates it. And I think that's important for branding. I think it's important for books. I think it's important for all of you who are trying to do something, get your health right. You don't get to go to the gym one time and be like, oh, I guess I'll try the next thing. It's like, you got to stay on the thing. You got to cultivate the thing.
Yeah. So one of the quotes I was reading this morning, just because I'm sort of a dork like that, this is what I do every day, forever, right? Poetry, read quotes, all that stuff. I just love it so much. And anyways, I came across this quote this morning from Oprah, who said, when we focus on what we have, we get more. And when we focus on what we don't have, we never have enough. And I just thought it was so powerful too around this idea of focus. You know what I mean? For this week when I read it this morning, because it is so easy. It is so easy to focus on what we don't have yet or what isn't, all those things.
What we haven't done yet or achieved yet.
Yeah. And then you never achieve enough. You never have enough. You never, right? And someone like her, who from the outside seems to have everything, her whole thing is when you focus on what you have, you have more. And I think that is just such a powerful thing.
She's
because
an example for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
She did a show
yeah.
for 20 years. She didn't do a million things. She did a show for 20 years. Like, that's
Yeah.
unbelievable discipline and dedication.
Yeah, yeah.
I also think, on the topic of focus, I wanted to jump in something today that I think people will resonate with, which was for this idea of focusing on what you have and focusing on what you have achieved. I think one great way to look at it too is sometimes when you're just going really strong, and you don't feel the day, you don't feel victory, you don't feel, in alignment, or the things are going, perfectly. I just remind you one great thing. Everyone goes, yeah, I need more focus. And I say, well, what are you focusing on? What is the discipline you are building? And one thing I think that most people don't focus on enough is their enjoyment of life. Like, you have to build in moments throughout the day to feel the day. You have to build in moments throughout the day, even when everything else is in chaos or not perfect, to still experience life and feel the day. So it's like your morning walk, or, Denise and I, we just took our morning walk, and then afterwards I jumped in the ocean and just spent 5 minutes floating like a dumb turtle there, just like, oh, this is great. And just
today?
Yeah. Even though I have, 400 emails I get personally today that none of my 200 plus team members can answer. So the 400 that come to me every day, and the 78 SMS texts I get every day. So 80 texts a day, 400 emails a day for a decade. I don't wake up in the morning like, oh my God, I got to get to those. I don't go throughout the day. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in lack because I haven't responded to all of those, and I don't have inbox 0. I'm like, okay, what's important? I want to make sure that even though I have tasks, even though I have lots of things to do, am I focused and disciplined throughout the day to enjoy little moments? Sometimes that's like, hey, go pet the cat. Sometimes that's take your walk. Sometimes that's your gym time. That is your lifetime. Sometimes it's your reading with your book and your green tea. Sometimes it's, calling your mama. Sometimes, whatever it is, if you don't build those in, the email, the text, the social media, the distractions from everybody else throwing their mission and their thing at you eats you alive. And all of a sudden you're not in the ocean, or all of a sudden you're not calling your mama, or all of a sudden you're not in the gym. And it's easy to let other things encroach. And so what I wanted to share today was like, hey, make sure that as you're hustling, you're all grit and you're working so hard, please make sure your focus and discipline is also to make sure you build life into each day. Building it all for, unless you're able to have more freedom each day and have more fulfillment each day. What's all the hustle and the grit and all that stuff for? If at some point you're not going to be a point where you enjoy the day more, but what if you could teach yourself now to enjoy the day as if you had what you needed? I think that is what I learned a lot from Taoism is, can I enjoy the day as if I already had everything? Can I enjoy the day as if I already was worth it? As if I already was in that state of bliss. Like if the bank account was full, the kids were all, dressed and clothed and happy. Like everybody was happy with you, and you had all sorts of Shangri-La moments in your life. Could you not just create that right now? Could you not create that 3 or 4 times throughout the day? Maybe you just visualize, you connecting with source, and you notice that you're full. Like God's got you. You're good. Like God made you unique and beautiful and strong and still here and gave you breath this morning. Can you sit with that without thinking my email, or without thinking that promotion? That's what I have found, that the high performers I admire, they've figured out how to build that in. And it's inspired me. There was plenty of times in my life I didn't do enough of that. And I was like, oh, there must be a better way. Because going weeks without feeling life, or months without taking a breath, that's not life. Like, why? So I love that Jamie's been talking very openly. She's been doing great this time around, even though she's worked harder than any of us will ever know. I think it's important to see us trying. Okay, yeah. See it trying. We all have lots to go, and we have lots to do, and we built billion-dollar businesses. The question is, can we still find those moments of sanity and joy in life within the moment.
So many things you just said are so powerful, but I think, well, first of all, just going way back, people are like, oh, I lack focus, but what are you focusing on? Right. And I think like a lot of people don't even know that answer. They don't even know that answer. I think that's so profound, just that. And then also something you just said that's so powerful is like the idea of scheduling in, feeling the day and feeling alive and enjoying the day. I think that is big. No one thinks to schedule those things in. They only think to schedule in all the things that take them away from from feeling the day, right? And then their whole thing is packed. And one more thing, the idea of can you live as if everything is, okay? I think that's huge, because if we don't figure out how to do that now, there's those famous words that you accomplish a big thing, you finally get that, but it never changes anything because you take you with you, right? Yeah. Right? You take you with you no matter what ends up happening, no matter how full your bank account gets, no matter what book you write or what job you get or what victory your kids have or whatever it is, you still take you with you, right? Those famous words. And so getting you right, so important, right? From where we're at right now. I think that's so huge. I think that's really huge.
So huge. And I'll give it a last metaphor and example for people. I've been coaching a lot of CEOs over the last decade of my life. And I worked with one CEO I remember went in, who I learned this, I kind of learned that in corporate America, you know what people fear in corporate America? An empty calendar. They're terrified. If they have a spot on their calendar, they feel guilty, like, oh, I need to fill that with a meeting. And so, yes, I'll take every meeting you throw by me. They feel like they just have to be, they feel like productivity is every block of time scheduled in some meeting with some people. And I was coaching this one executive one time, and we looked at his calendar. It was the first thing I do with the client. I want to see their calendar. I want to see their last 6 months of a calendar. It tells me so much. And it was just, meeting. And I just looked at it. And this is the first day meeting this executive. And I looked at the calendar, I go, you're secretly miserable inside, aren't you? And I don't think anyone had ever said that. And he was like, what? And I said, there's not a moment in here from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. that's not scheduled. And I'm the schedule yourself. I'm the high performance planner guy.
Yeah, you are.
I love scheduling, but it's blocks of time that show clear progress towards the needle moving activities that matter. Most people can wipe out half the meetings in their week with absolutely no impact whatsoever on their performance or their productivity in the work. Half the meetings, half. And so this guy, we had to cut out 90%. And that made the business better. It made him happier. It made his teams happier because you didn't have a grumpy bear there all day. Suddenly it was like, oh, now there's a creative force back in. And so I feel like some of you've scheduled yourself and the kids and the projects and the dreams 24/7, but there's no take a walk at the park. There's no read a book. There's no meditate. There's no gym. There's no like life outside of those things. And there will never be life outside of those things until you build them in. Like everyone says, what should I focus on? I'm like, have you ever focused on creating lots of blocks of free time? I mean, where's the block of free time that you've been focused on building? I just feel like if we're going to focus on anything, let's focus on building a great life, or to the extent that we can. Because yes, we got to make the money and we got to launch the projects and we got to do the work. But could we focus on building a greater lifestyle? No matter what your income is, no matter how young the kids are, no matter how much the business is growing or how many team, could you still just give a few minutes or even hour a week thinking of how to build more goodness into your life? I think that's worth the focus. And I've learned people don't focus on that. They're focused on everything else but building life into life.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.